I'm filming this video while the news is still fresh and painful that my friend and my most significant musical influence has passed away. And I'm speaking with reverence of the great Guido Basso. There is much to be said about Guido because he touched a lot of lives, both people he knew and people who knew him from his music. I want to share a couple of personal recollections and let you hear something that you have likely never heard and which to me encaptures Guido's musical essence. I talked about Guido in this video, and specifically about his magnificent solo on Portrait of Jenny, which was recorded in 1976 on the Jazz album with Rob McConnell's Boss Brass. As a young trumpet player beginning my career in San Francisco, I transcribed this solo, and I played it every day for months. Knowing that Guido lived in Toronto was a major decision why I made the decision to move here, and it was my eternal good fortune to have had so many opportunities to play with him, including as a guest on a couple of my own CDs. The thing that stands out to me the most about Guido is his humanity. He was incredibly gracious, warm, and genuinely interested. His personality comes through on his horn, and especially on ballads, when it sounds like he's whispering in your ear. As much as anyone I've ever known, his instrument was his voice. His instrument, of course, was the flugelhorn. Now, while most trumpet players play the flugelhorn, Guido was one of only a very small handful for whom it was really the primary instrument. You can tell it's him in just a few notes, and I don't think there's anyone among us who knew and played with him who hasn't absorbed some of his style. His influence was subtle, but powerful. Before I let Guido speak for himself through his horn, I'll share a couple of quick stories. I remember sitting in a restaurant in Ottawa with Guido and his wife, Kristen. By the time we left, we all knew a lot about the waiter, because Guido and Kristen both kept peppering him with questions. They wanted to know about the life of another person, even in such a passing acquaintance. On another occasion, I remember sitting in a bar with Guido and Kristen and a whole pile of trumpet players, which included Ronnie Rom. Ronnie was drawing a picture of his mouthpiece on a napkin, and Guido was paying rapt attention. Now, Guido was always interested in the latest new innovation in the brass world, and he'd call me up asking if I'd played such and such a horn. In the end, though, he was an old dog with new tricks, always reverting back to his beat-up Giardinelli mouthpiece and beloved French Besson flugelhorns, although he did eventually make the transition to Yamaha. As I watched with amusement his reaction to Ronnie's napkin drawing, I said to Kristen, "He'll never change." And her reply was, "I hope he never does. It keeps him young." At a trumpet conference quite a few years ago, Guido was on stage for a clinic with another well-known trumpet player. Now, this person transitioned from a very successful career in the studios to focus on jazz playing for the rest of his career. I'll leave him nameless, but it's not Bobby Shew. Somebody in the audience posed the question, how important are high notes in a jazz solo? And of course they did, because it was a room full of trumpet players. Well, the question kind of ticked off the other trumpet player, and he responded a bit sharply, "Any idiot can play high notes." Now, given the audience, that created somewhat of a tense atmosphere in the room until Guido, who once described himself as the only trumpet player to have a successful career in the studios without playing above the staff, said, "If I had hair, I probably wouldn't wear a baseball cap. If you have high chops and you use them musically, God bless you." And with those few words, everyone laughed, and the tension in the room was gone. Now, I'll share one more story that's related to the music that I want you to hear. I think few people have heard this because I don't believe it was ever released, although I could be wrong. This was a session put together by the pianist Jimmy Dale, and I was in the booth for the recording. I think it was Neil Swinson on bass and Terry Clark on drums, and Guido was the featured soloist. Now, Guido was a perfectionist and self-critical, which is probably common among great artists. On one of the tunes, he did take after take, and he was never satisfied with what he heard on playback, even though to our ears they all sounded great. Eventually, I suggested to the engineer that he play back the first take instead of the one they had just recorded without telling Guido. Guido listened to it and said, "That's the one." Now, I don't think it was this tune, but I've always played this for students as an introduction to Guido's artistry. The tune is "All the Sad Young Men," which kind of describes my current state of mind, except for the young part. Just the first few notes, played a cappella, speak volumes about Guido's musical soul. And listening to it, now that his life is over, it sounds to me like a requiem. And who better to play Guido out than Guido himself?